Hello everyone. So I thought I'll share today the list of all the GUI based applications that I use. I mean, not all of them, but I would say 90% of them, and also the terminal based applications. So this video, I believe, could be useful for someone who is making a switch from Mac or Windows to Linux, especially Arch Linux. And maybe if you just want to know what all applications I use 90% or maybe 95% of the times, then I think this could be useful because I'll share what these applications are all about. Now, talking about, let us first talk about the GUI based application, graphical user interface based applications. The list is, of course, not really huge. The first one is Brave. So I use Brave for my browsing needs. Uh, I have been using Brave for, I believe, more than 13, 14 months. I'm quite happy with it. It is, of course, based on Chromium engine. So if you're used to working on Chrome, Brave is, of course, not really any different. So Brave is the browser. So talking about the second item I have, the second application is GIMP. GIMP is a very popular image manipulation software. If you are used to working on Photoshop, then GIMP is equivalent, but of course open source and it is free. And by the way, all of these utilities, applications, tools are all open source. So I don't really think I use any paid one. Now, I mean, yeah, I do use a couple of paid ones, but I'll come to it. So the third one or the next one is Inkscape. So I do a lot of, or I used to do a lot of graphic designing, vector graphic designing, and usually people do it in Corel Draw or Illustrator, but you can use Inkscape if you want. So, for example, if you want to make a logo or banner, you can do it using Inkscape. The next one I have in the list is IDEA, or I should say IntelliJ. So I write code in Java and GUI, and although I have Emacs, I always prefer using Emacs. But if you're using IntelliJ, then things are much convenient because you get all the features uh, of those Java APIs. For example, I write code for uh, Jira apps or maybe script now for Jira, and I need that capability of where I type in, let us say, component accessor or component manager, and if I press dot, I have all the list of methods available with me. So I do this using only IntelliJ because that makes me fast. I tried using Emacs, but I have never been able to configure Emacs properly. I know about YA snippet, but to pick up things from the APIs, especially Jira APIs, or I guess any Java-based development, I'm sure Emacs can do it, but I've not really achieved it yet. So I still use Emacs, or not really Emacs. I mean, I do use Emacs, but I use IntelliJ. The next one is Code, which is Visual Studio Code. I do also write apps for Jira Cloud, which is in Node.js. And if you're using Code, although I don't really think I need to use Code, but uh, again, just like IntelliJ, if you're using Code, you get some help when you're writing code. But I might experiment with only using Emacs for Node.js because it is JavaScript end of the day. The next GUI-based application I have is LibreOffice, which is basically, of course, equivalent of your Microsoft Office. And the good thing about LibreOffice utilities is that you can also work, I mean, not only work, but you can also do few things on the command line, on the terminal. For example, if you want to convert, let us say, a Word document to a PDF or you can do some conversion. So basically, there is a when you install LibreOffice, you will get S-Office, or I think also you can use a couple of other commands. But this is something that I of course use, and I think we all should use because from time to time I do receive Word documents or Excel files or PPT, and I need the ability to at least open them. Sometimes people ask me, "Can you please send me a Word document?" Which I am of course trying to avoid, but if I have to, I can using LibreOffice. So you can always convert your org file to ODT and then eventually to, of course, doc X file. The next one I have in the list is Zoom. So we all know Zoom, and I have to use Zoom because Zoom is popular. People are using it, and I don't really want to. I don't really want to say to my clients, okay, I'll not be using Zoom because I only use open source, so I use Zoom. And similarly Slack and also Signal. So I hope you know what Slack is. And by the way, both Zoom and Slack, they work fine on, they're not great, but they work fine on Linux. The next one, the last one I have in the list is Signal, which is of course like I use the desktop version because Signal, I don't really think Signal has a web interface because WhatsApp has a web interface which I use, but not really Signal. Maybe there is, but I'm not really aware of it. So I just have this Signal desktop installed. So these are all the GUI based applications. And to be honest, most of the times I'm only using Brave or a code editor, but rest of these applications are only when I have to use, let us say, Zoom for a meeting, or maybe if I have to make a logo, which is of course something I don't really do every day, but I can use Inkscape or GIMP regularly. I mean, not regularly, but once in a while, every other day, I do modify some images. But Brave is always, of course, because it is a browser and it is always open. Now, talking about terminal-based applications, and by the way, these applications, the list is not really complete. I may also use a few other applications, but these are the most common ones. For terminal-based applications, where you don't even need any desktop manager, uh, I mean, of course, you need desktop managers sometimes, but most of them will work even on a server. So talking about my music consumption, I use MPV for maybe playing MP4 files if I have to. Using MPV, you can also play YouTube videos. At the same time, I use FFmpeg, which I believe was in the list. So I use, of course, FFmpeg as well. So MPV, FFmpeg, and FFmpeg also comes with FFplay. You can also use it to play videos or maybe audio files. And then for my music consumption, I use MPC or MPD. I use MPD, which is of course the server music player daemon, and I've made a lot of videos on this. And for client, I use either MPC or NCMP CPP. And the next one in the list is, and by the way, NCMP CPP is like really good client for media consumption if you are using MPD. Good thing about MPD is that it can be on, you can basically set up a small old computer where you can store all your, maybe attach your hard disk, and that would be your server. And using NCMP, CPP, or maybe MPC, you can actually connect to that server. And of course, I use Emacs. So you all know I love Emacs, and I also use YouTube DL if you have to, let us say, download a video. I don't really do it that much, but using YouTube DL, you can also download the MP3 version of maybe a video. Really convenient. For viewing images, I use SXIV, which is wonderful. And for viewing PDF files, I use Jatura. For doing some conversion, or maybe converting, let us say, images to PDF, or maybe for extracting images from PDF, I use Convert. So I think if you install Image Magic, I think it will give you a lot of those utilities. Then I also use, of course, LaTeX. I still don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but it is whatever, LaTeX. So you need to install TextLive most if you're on Arch. And I use so talking about these utilities for PDF conversion or images, along with Convert, you also have this package called Poplar, which is wonderful because you can extract text from PDF file using PDF to text, and there are similar utilities. So Poplar is the name of the package. Then for reviewing your viewing the directory structure, for example, if you want to know the directory structure of a folder where you may want to list all the directories and files, you can use tree. And for doing searching within your Linux terminal, I use FZF, which is for the search, which is really good, by the way. It will really make your life a lot more simpler If I mean, you can always use find utility, by the way. And by the way, I'm just talking about these most of them are not really standard utilities. If you install Linux, you won't get these utilities. You need to install them, and that is why I have listed them here. But if you're using Arch Linux, I think for Arch Linux you have to install even more. So most of the applications, most of the standard utilities are not even there in Arch. You have to install them, which is good in a way. So you know what you're doing. And then for taking screenshots, I use ksnip quite a lot. And I also use wget and curl. So you may not get wget with your installation, because I don't really think you get it with Arch Linux, but I use wget a lot. Also curl for making REST calls. And when you're making REST calls, you need to use, I mean, you don't need to, but if you use JQ, which is basically a JSON parser, it will make your life much more easier. And also something like cut for basically, cut is of course not really, it might be, but I'm not really sure. But using cut, you can actually, for example, if you are returning a list or maybe a line and you want to delimit it and you want to extract the first part or the second part, you can actually use cut. It is a wonderful utility. And the last one I have in the list is media info, which is basically wonderful utility because using media info, you can actually get the size of the image or the size of the video, the resolution. If you're working with the FFmpeg, you need to know, let us say, the duration of your video file or maybe audio file. So media info is wonderful utility. It really makes things easy for you. So as I mentioned before, the purpose of the video was basically to help you in case you're trying to make a switch to Linux, or maybe you're already using Linux, but you just wanted to know what all applications I use, both GUI based and terminal based. So this is my list. I hope you found this video useful and you also learned something new today. Thank you very much. Bye bye.